Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank Madam Leader for introducing an important resolution so that generations in the future in the city and the state of New York, those of who will look at the body of work that we complete, will know that we recognize the greatness of John Lewis. This is one of these generational where were you moments. I happened to be sleeping, but I woke up and I looked at the news and I found out that Congressman John Lewis had passed away, and rarely do I take to social media after midnight, but I felt compelled to write something because I was moved by his life's body of work. I was moved by all that he had accomplished, and I was moved by his simple presence in the physical plane. And I think about me being in this chamber, and I was, as Madam Leader was speaking, I was looking up, and I was looking at, wow, this is a beautiful place. And it's so amazing and incredible that I have the privilege of being here, and I would not be here today if not for John Lewis. Now, on February 4th, this past year, I spoke about my great-great-great-grandmother, Sylvia Richardson Holder, that she was born into slavery and that we're not that far removed. And one of the things that if you're looking up John Lewis's biography and you look about where he came from, the humble beginnings that he came from, it says that he was the son of sharecroppers. Now, the phrase, the son of a sharecropper, isn't just a throwaway line to describe his legacy and his rise from humble beginnings, like I said before, or his dedication, but that should remind us, again, still in the year 2020, that we are not that far removed from the vestiges of slavery. John Lewis spent every single day of his life fighting against that, fighting for people, fighting for equality. You know, you can't find anybody with good sense, Mr. President, to say a bad thing about John Lewis. Regardless of whatever political affiliation you may hold, you have to respect the tenacity and the willingness to risk his own life for people that he didn't know. And there's so many quotes. John Lewis said, "Take a long, hard look down the road you will have to travel once you've made a commitment to work for change. Know that this transformation will not happen right away. Change often takes time. It rarely happens at once. In the movement, we didn't know how history would play itself out. When we were getting arrested and waiting in jail or standing in unmovable lines on courthouse steps, we didn't know what would happen, but we knew it had to happen." Mr. President, my prediction is that once America truly understands the greatness of John Lewis and you look at his quotables, people will realize that he was simply just as profound as Dr. King was. And his many quotes and his many statements also backed up with action. The book of James in the Bible tells us that faith without works is dead. And Congressman Lewis had the faith, but he had the work behind the faith. And he proved that on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And after having his skull fractured, he didn't stop. Dare I say he was further emboldened by that experience, that near-death experience, to move forward and move faster, and be better, not just for himself, but for people that he never knew that he would inspire, Mr. President. I think I've said it on the floor before, the greatest test of leadership is not simply helping people you know, but it's helping people that you will never meet. I never got to meet John Lewis, but my life has profoundly been inspired by the work that he's done. You know, he had another quote that it said, when we were organizing voter registration drives, going on freedom rides, sitting in, coming to Washington for the first time and getting arrested, going to jail, being beaten, I never thought, I never dreamed of the possibility that an African American would one day be elected president of the United States of America. That's why that picture that Madam Leader mentioned with John Lewis and President Barack Obama was so powerful, because if you've come from rural Alabama and you've spent your whole life fighting against injustice, the simple visual of that is enough to make you burst into tears. Now, Congressmember John Lewis was not afraid of new leadership. He was not afraid of the younger generation. And in fact, he wrote a series of graphic novels about his work in the civil rights movement so that younger readers could be inspired by that. And he spoke about when he accepted an award, a National Book Award in 2016. He said, "Some of you knew I grew up in rural Alabama, very poor, very few books in our home. And I remember in 1956, when I was 16 years old, going to the public library to get library cards. And we were told that the library was for whites only and not for colored people. And to come here and receive this honor, it's too much." He spoke about how he had a wonderful teacher in elementary school and said, "Read, my child, read." Generations before us are responsible for our success. And John Lewis's teacher encouraged him to read, and his book hopefully will encourage nations and scores of people to read about the work that he's done. And speaking of youth, they say youth is often wasted on the young, but it wasn't on John Lewis. In his 20s, being a civil rights icon in his 20s, but he did not rest on those laurels. In 2019, John Lewis talked about youth climate activists, and he said that these young people are saying that we all have a right to know what is in the air that we breathe, in the water that we drink, in the food that we eat. It is our responsibility to leave this planet cleaner and greener. That must be our legacy. You see, John Lewis was versatile. He spoke about a great variety of things that impacted not just black people, not just people of color, but our entire world. That's who John Lewis was, Mr. President. "I've said this before, and I'll say it again," said John Lewis. "The vote is precious. It's almost sacred. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have in democracy." He spoke about getting in good and necessary trouble and helped to redeem the soul of America. As Madam Leader said, his last public appearance was a powerful one in front of that Black Lives Matter mural in Washington, D.C. And he spoke about the Justice in Policing Act related to the tragic murder of George Floyd, and he said that democracy cannot thrive where power remains unchecked and justice is reserved for a select few. Ignoring these cries and failing to respond to this movement is simply not an option, for peace cannot exist where justice is not served. Peace cannot exist where justice is not served. As I conclude, the final quote from John Lewis, I ask everybody to think about the work that he's done, to think about what he has done for you, indirectly or directly. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. We must say, "Wake up, America, wake up." For we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient. Congressman Lewis, thank you for never stopping. Thank you for never being patient. Thank you for being great. May you rest in peace, and may your legacy live on. I vote aye on the resolution, Mr. President.